This is the story of the most brilliant doctor on television and the most miserable human being in his own hospital. Over 8 seasons, he solves cases no one else on Earth can touch, while losing his team, his mind, and the only people who ever loved him. And it all builds to one of the boldest endings a show has ever pulled off. An ending you can only feel if you take the whole ride. So we're starting at the very beginning, with the first patient who ever walked through his door. It starts with a kindergarten teacher named Rebecca Adler, who's been talking to her class one morning when her words turn into gibberish and she collapses with a seizure. Every doctor who sees her is stumped, so her case lands with the one man who only takes the cases that stump everyone else. Dr. Gregory House, head of the Department of Diagnostic Medicine at Princeton Plainsboro Teaching Hospital. And House is not what you'd expect a genius doctor to look like. He walks with a cane, he's in visible pain, he pops a painkiller called Vicodin like it's candy, and he refuses to actually meet his patients because, in his words, patients only get in the way of a diagnosis. His entire philosophy fits in 2 words. He says them out loud in the very first episode. Everybody lies. People lie about their drinking, their affairs, their symptoms, so House ignores what they say and interrogates what their bodies are hiding. A doctor who hates his patients is a bold way to practice medicine. He doesn't work alone, though. He runs a team of 3 young doctors he treats like minions. There's Eric Foreman, a neurologist House didn't hire for his resume. He hired him because Foreman has a juvenile record for breaking and entering, and House needs someone who can break into patients' homes to find what they're lying about. He hired a neurologist partly for his breaking and entering experience. There's Robert Chase, the pretty boy intensive care specialist whose famous surgeon father got him the job with one phone call. A rich kid who we later learn once trained to be a priest before losing his faith. And then there's Allison Cameron, the immunologist with the biggest heart in the building, the one who actually cares about how patients feel, which House openly considers a design flaw. Above them sits Lisa Cuddy, the dean of medicine, the only boss alive of the patients to keep House employed, and she opens the series by forcing him to finally work clinic duty, which House treats like a prison sentence. And then there's the one person in the world who actually likes him, James Wilson, the head of cancer medicine, House's best and only friend, who keeps bailing him out of trouble like it's a part-time job. The first big shakeup arrives in the form of money. A billionaire named Edward Vogler donates $100 million to the hospital, takes over as chairman of the board, and decides the most expensive, least obedient employee in the building needs to be put on a leash. He orders House to fire one of his own team, purely to prove that House will obey. House refuses, so Vogler squeezes harder, and when Cameron realizes someone has to go, she quits on her own so House won't have to choose.
You don't need to worry about firing anyone. I'm leaving.
Vogler then tries to make House publicly promote his company's new drug in a speech, and House gets up at the podium and tells a room full of doctors that the expensive new drug is no better than the cheap old one. He had one job at that podium, and he chose violence. Vogler retaliates by calling a board vote to fire House, and when Wilson is the only one who votes no, the board strips Wilson of his position too. It all comes down to a second vote, where Cuddy, the woman House torments daily, refuses to fire him. The board slips, and Vogler gets thrown out of the hospital with his $100 million. To get Cameron back, House has to agree to her one condition: a real date. And it goes exactly how you'd fear. He tells her to her face that she isn't in love with him, she's just attracted to damaged things she can fix.
That's why you married a man who's dying of cancer. You don't love, you need.
One date, and the man autopsies the entire relationship at the table. But the season has been hiding its real bombshell for the finale stretch, and it walks in wearing a nice coat, a woman named Stacy Warner, begging House to figure out what's wrong with her husband, Mark. Stacy isn't just some visitor, she's the ex-girlfriend, the one who lived with House for 5 years, and House wants nothing to do with her.
You think this is easy for her? The only reason she'd be anywhere near you is if she was desperate.
Instead, he goes on to give a lecture where he presents 3 3 leg pain cases to a room of students, and slowly you realize one of those cases is him. Years ago, House came in with crippling leg pain, and the doctors wrote him off as a drug seeker for days. By the time anyone caught the truth, a blood clot starving his thigh muscle, the muscle was dying, and the safe play was amputation. House refused, demanded a riskier surgery to keep the leg, and had himself put into a chemical coma to sleep through the worst of the pain.
Did you give up your leg to save my life?
Of course.
Then why do you think your life is worth less than mine?
And while he was under, the person with a legal right to decide for him, his girlfriend Stacy, went against his explicit wishes and let the surgeons carve out the dead muscle as a middle ground. It saved his life, and it left him with a ruined thigh, a cane, and pain that will never, ever stop. That's the wound under everything. The woman he loved overruled him at his most helpless, and he never forgave her. Now you understand the pills, the cane, and the armor. And now Stacy's back, asking for help.
I've got an opening in my calendar for 10 tomorrow morning. Make sure your husband isn't late.
House takes the case, of course, and cracks it. Mark has a rare condition called porphyria and saves the husband of the woman who broke him. And then Cuddy twists the knife. She hires Stacy as the hospital's new lawyer, meaning House's greatest heartbreak now works down the hall. With Stacy in the building every day, House becomes a man on a mission. And the mission is making her admit she still has feelings for him. His methods are deranged. He crashes her husband's therapy group, and then he flat out breaks into her therapist's office and reads her confidential file to find out how she really feels. He even ends up at her house catching a rat in her walls, and when the rat turns out to be sick, House gets so invested in diagnosing it that he keeps it as a pet and names it Steve McQueen.
You could have asked me how I was.
I already knew. Sorry you were miserable.
And slowly, insanely, it works. A legal mess sends House and Stacy to Baltimore together. A snowstorm strands them at the airport, and they kiss. Not long after, they sleep together, and Stacy makes the call. She's going to leave Mark and choose House. For real this time. And House, staring at the one thing he's wanted for years, tells her to go back to her husband. He's done the math on himself, and he's concluded that Mark can make her happy, and he can only make her miserable. She leaves the hospital for good, and right on cue, House's leg pain gets dramatically worse.
Shut up about Mark. What the hell's wrong with
I
you?
can't make you happy.
Meanwhile, the team is going through a meat grinder of its own. Chase kisses a 9-year-old patient at her request because she's dying of cancer and wants to be kissed once before the end, in one of the saddest, sweetest scenes the show ever does. Then Chase's estranged father dies of lung cancer without ever telling him, and a distracted, grieving Chase makes a dosage mistake that kills a patient, gets the hospital sued for $10 million, and barely survives the disciplinary hearing. Cameron gets a patient's infected blood sprayed into her face, spends a week refusing to learn whether she has HIV, steals some ecstasy, and sleeps with Chase while high. 3 decisions she regrets at roughly the same speed. House's parents even pass through for a visit, and we get one look at his father, John, a rigid ex-Marine pilot House can barely sit at table with, and suddenly, the armor makes even more sense. Then the show nearly kills the main character. A cop comes in laughing uncontrollably at things that aren't funny, and while searching the man's apartment, Foreman gets exposed to whatever the cop has. The cop dies screaming, and now the same thing is inside Foreman, moving faster. He nearly dies in an isolation room, close enough that he reconciles with his father, who he hasn't seen in 8 years, before the team drags him back from the edge with permanent reminders of how close it was. And then the year ends with a literal bang. A stranger walks into House's office, the husband of a former patient whose life House wrecked by exposing her secrets, and shoots House twice in front of his team. What follows is one of the trippiest hours of the show. House wakes up with a shooter recovering in the bed next to his, and the two debate whether House's genius is worth the misery he spreads, until House works out that none of this is real.
How did you know I was...
He's hallucinating on the operating table, and the hallucination has shown him something he can't unsee. Maybe some of his pain is in his head. So, with the loss of his consciousness, he asks for an experimental ketamine treatment that might reboot his pain, and the screen cuts to black. The ketamine works, and House comes back from the summer pain-free, jogging 8 miles to work, doing handstands off skateboards, smiling like a man who got parole from his own body. And then, a few cases in, the pain whispers back into his leg. Kane comes back out of the closet, and the Vicodin bottle reappears on the desk. He got to be free just long enough to remember exactly what he lost, which is the headspace he's in when he meets the worst clinic patient of his life. The guy is rude. House is House. And the encounter ends with House leaving the man alone in an exam room with a thermometer parked somewhere extremely undignified and refusing to apologize for it. Yes, that thermometer. Exactly where you're imagining. Unfortunately for House, the patient is Detective Michael Tritter, a cop with a long memory and a theory that a doctor this high is a danger to everyone. When House won't say sorry, Tritter pulls him over, finds Vicodin on him, and arrests him.
You are under arrest for possession of narcotics.
Then he searches House's apartment and finds 600 pills, which upgrades the charge to drug trafficking, picking a fight with an armed detective. Bold diagnostic strategy. And Tritter doesn't stop at House. He freezes the team's bank accounts, seizes Wilson's car, suspends Wilson's ability to prescribe, basically shutting down his cancer practice, and deliberately leaves Chase untouched so the team will tear itself apart, guessing who the rat is. Cuddy tries to force House into a plea deal by rationing his pills, and a withdrawing, sweating House nearly amputates a little girl's arm and leg for a disease she doesn't have, with Chase catching the real answer just in time and getting punched in the face by House for his trouble. That punch convinces Wilson his friend is beyond saving, so Wilson cuts a deal with Tritter.
Statistically, the two of you will be in jail.
House finally caves and agrees to take the deal too, but by then, Tritter has discovered that House stole painkillers from a dead patient, and that deal evaporates. It all lands in a courtroom where the case dies in the most House way possible. Cuddy gets on the stand, fakes the pharmacy records, and commits straight up perjury to make it look like House was only ever taking a placebo. The judge tosses the case, and the cop walks out on the show.
Merry Christmas.
Buried in the middle of all this chaos is one of the quietest, most important scenes of the series. Stuck on punishment clinic duty, House treats a young woman who is raped, and she refuses to talk to anyone but him.
I like to keep being treated by him.
Trying to reach her, House tells her something he has never told anyone on screen, that he was abused as a child by a grandmother whose punishments included ice baths and nights sleeping in the yard, and that he admits the grandmother was really his father. The armor, the control, the inability to trust. The show just handed you the receipt. And then the original team dies. Not literally, professionally. Foreman saves 2 lives with a brutal call that House would have made without blinking, looks himself in the mirror, and resigns on the spot because he refuses to become his boss. House responds with pure House. He sabotages Foreman's job interview at another hospital out of spite. Then, on Foreman's last day, House fires Chase for no real reason, and Cameron, watching the family implode, hands in her resignation too. In one afternoon, the genius who can't keep people drives away all 3. The only silver lining belongs to Cameron, who realizes the thing she'll actually miss is Chase, shows up at his door, and starts the real version of the relationship. So House needs a new team, and Wilson has to steal his beloved guitar and hold it hostage just to make him start interviewing. House's idea of interviewing is to summon 40 applicants, pin numbers on them like game show contestants, and run a weeks-long elimination tournament where he fires people in batches for sport. He staffed a hospital department like a reality dating show. The contest is unhinged. One applicant turns out to not even be a doctor, just a retired admissions officer who bluffed his way in, and House keeps him around for a while anyway because he likes how the guy thinks. There's a challenge to steal Cuddy's underwear. At one point, House electrocutes himself with a knife in a wall socket to test a patient's near-death claim after carefully paging the one applicant ruthless enough to revive him without hesitating. Meanwhile, Foreman discovers the market value of being House-like. He gets his own department in another hospital, breaks the rules once to save a patient, and gets fired so hard that nobody in medicine will touch him, except Cuddy, who drags him back to Princeton Plainsboro to supervise the circus.
I can start Monday.
When the dust settles, House manipulates Cuddy into approving his final picks. Chris Taub, a middle-aged plastic surgeon who torched his career over an affair, Lawrence Kuttner, a walking golden retriever of a doctor who was orphaned at 6 when his parents were murdered in a robbery and somehow grew up an optimist anyway, and a mysterious guarded internist who refuses to share anything personal, so everyone just calls her by her contestant number, 13. The most ruthless finalist of all, a woman House nicknames Cutthroat Bitch, gets cut at the last hurdle. Her name is Amber, and instead instead of leaving the show, she does something nobody saw coming. She starts dating Wilson. He nicknamed her Cutthroat Bitch, and that was the friendly version. House reacts to his best friend dating his nemesis about as maturely as you'd guess, running surveillance and sabotage until the two of them literally negotiate a custody schedule for Wilson's free time.
I'm proposing I get every other day and every other weekend.
But underneath the comedy, the show's loading a gun. Everyone settles in, the new team clicks, Wilson's happy, and the season feels light. It comes on a bus. House wakes up in a destroyed city bus with a head injury and a hole in his memory, and one certainty burning through the fog. Someone on that bus is dying, and not from the crash. From a disease he saw the warning sign of and now can't remember. He becomes a man possessed, hypnotizing himself, sleep depriving himself, drugging himself, clawing at the missing hours. He remembers being drunk at the bar. He remembers calling Wilson for a ride. And then in a final desperate procedure, electrodes pushed deep into his own brain, the face surfaces. And it's the one face that turns this from a mystery into a tragedy. Amber. Wilson's Amber. She answered the phone that night because Wilson was on call, came to the bar to take a drunk House home, and followed him onto that bus. She's been lying in another hospital this whole time as a nameless Jane Doe, and she is dying. The crash damaged her kidneys, and the ordinary flu pills she'd taken that night have been building up in her blood ever since, with no way to filter them out. By the time House remembers her, there's nothing in medicine left to try. House pushes the brain procedure so hard he seizes and his own heart stops, and in the darkness, he hallucinates Amber telling him, with terrible kindness, that the world is going to go on without her. When he wakes, the team does the only thing left. They bring her gently out of sedation so she and Wilson can have one last conversation, and one by one, the people who competed against her file in to say goodbye. Then Wilson lies down beside her and switches off the machine, keeping her heart going, and holds her while she slips away. Her death echoes immediately. 13, rattled by how randomly life can end, finally takes the test she's been avoiding her whole adult life for Huntington's disease, the incurable condition that destroyed her mother, and it comes back positive. She now has a countdown inside her own DNA, and Wilson, the one person who never gave up on House, looks at the friend whose drunken phone call put Amber on that bus, and something between them breaks. The fallout is immediate. Wilson resigns from the hospital, and when House asks if they're still friends, Wilson tells him no. House, unable to process feelings like a person, hires a private investigator named Lucas to spy on his own best friend, which is exactly the kind of gesture that explains why Wilson left. Then House's father dies. House has zero interest in attending, so Cuddy and House's mother conspire to get him there, with Wilson roped into driving him as one last favor.
I am not doing this because I care.
The road trip accidentally resurrects the friendship. We even learn how it started, with House bailing a stranger named Wilson out of jail after a conference meltdown. And at the funeral, House leans over the casket and quietly collects a DNA sample, because he spent his whole life suspecting the cold man who raised him wasn't his biological father. The test eventually proves him right. The childhood that built all that armor was built on a stranger. Life keeps moving around him. Cuddy, after years of wanting a child, adopts a baby girl named Rachel. Foreman and 13 fall for each other while running a clinical drug trial for her Huntington's, which gets complicated when 13 starts reacting badly to the experimental medication. And House stumbles onto a different painkiller, methadone, which does the impossible. It switches his leg pain completely off. For a few glorious days, he's relaxed, kind, and even shaves and wears a suit, and it terrifies everyone who knows him.
You shaved.
A cheerful House scared the staff more than any dying patient. But pain-free House misses a detail that nearly kills a patient, and House decides the misery is load-bearing. He trusts the version of himself that hurts. He hands back the methadone and picks the pain on purpose, which might be the single most revealing decision in the entire series. And then comes the episode nobody saw coming, because nobody was supposed to. 13 and Foreman go to check on Kuttner when he doesn't doesn't show for work, and then they find him on his bedroom floor, dead from a self-inflicted gunshot. No note, no warning, no explanation. The sweetest member of the team, the orphan who chose optimism, is just gone. House can't accept it. Not emotionally, diagnostically. A man he saw every single day was in that much pain, and House never caught a symptom. So he decides it must be murder, and he investigates Kuttner's death like a case, harassing the grieving parents, hunting for a culprit, because any answer is better than "I missed it." There is no culprit.
He didn't say anything to any of you.
There's just a photograph. He finally finds a Kuttner sitting alone, smile switched off, hollow-eyed, and House understands that the evidence was there in a language even he couldn't read. That guilt is the crack the season pours itself into. House stops sleeping, and into the sleepless nights walks Amber. Dead Amber, sharp as ever, visible only to him. He hides the hallucination behind a Bluetooth earpiece so he could argue with her in public, but she gets darker, nudging him into stunts that nearly killed Chase at his own bachelor party. Desperate, House finally does the unthinkable. He goes to Cuddy, confesses everything, and she stays with him through a brutal overnight detox that ends with the two of them finally falling into each other after 20 years of tension. He arrives at work the next morning clean, calm, and quietly happy, until he mentions the night to Wilson, and Cuddy reacts like he's speaking another language. The lipstick he remembers her leaving behind is a pill bottle.
I'm not okay.
The detox never happened. The night together never happened. His mind built the whole thing, and the truth lands. Amber and Kuttner appear at his side, smiling. House is in full psychotic collapse from the drugs and the grief, and for once, he doesn't argue with the diagnosis. The season ends on two images cut against each other. Chase and Cameron getting married in white, and Wilson driving House to the gates of Mayfield Psychiatric Hospital, where the great Gregory House hands over his belongings and commits himself. Recovery does not start gracefully. The detox alone nearly turns House inside out, and once he's clean, he discovers he can't leave with a medical license unless a psychiatrist, Dr. Daryl Nolan, signs off. So House declares war on the man instead. He schemes, he blackmails, he organizes the other patients, he diagnoses his ward mates for entertainment, and Nolan calmly absorbs every attack like he's seen 100 houses before. Even in a psych ward, he diagnoses the other patients for fun. And then, slowly, the impossible happens. House stops fighting. He opens up about the pain, the loneliness, his father, even risks his heart on a fellow visitor named Lydia and gets it bruised. And instead of reaching for a pill, he reaches for his doctor. Nolan watches the most arrogant man in medicine ask for help and signs his release.
Come inside and get some sleep. Tomorrow you can start saying your goodbyes.
House walks out clean, moves in with Wilson, and even briefly quits diagnostics to try cooking, which lasts about as long as you'd think. Back at the hospital, Foreman has been running the department, where his first act of authority is firing his own girlfriend, 13, because she won't challenge his decisions, a management masterclass that ends both the relationship and most of his team. When House returns to the job, the show hits the team with the darkest moral test. The patient is President Dybala, a genocidal African dictator, and the dilemma is brutal. Cure him, and he flies home to finish exterminating a people. Chase, the former almost priest, makes the call alone. He swaps Dybala's blood work. The team treats the wrong disease, and the dictator dies at his bed. Thousands of strangers live because Chase quietly killed his patient.
He's going to kill the Sativi. Every last one of them.
I don't care what he was gonna do. He came to us and put his life in our hands.
House figures it out almost instantly and helps bury the evidence. But Jace can't bury what he did. The guilt seeps into his marriage until he finally confesses to Cameron. And Cameron, the conscience of the show since episode 1, looks at her husband and then at House and understands that this place corrupts everyone it touches. She blames House for turning a good man into someone who could play God, and she leaves. The hospital, the marriage, the series. And while House was away getting sane, he lost the thing he never admitted he wanted. Cuddy is now dating Lucas, the private investigator House himself hired, and watching them together quietly eats House alive, all the way up to the night he learns they've gotten engaged. It all converges on one terrible night. A construction crane collapses onto a building, and at the disaster site, House crawls into the wreckage to stay with a trapped young woman named Hannah, whose leg is pinned and crushed beyond saving. The doctors say amputate. Hannah refuses to live with one leg, and House, of all people, starts out agreeing with her, fighting to free the leg.
They cut out a chunk of muscle about the size of my fist. They left me with this mutilated, useless thing. I'm in pain every day.
Until the building shifts, the time runs out, and House does something he has never done in 6 years of television. He tells a stranger the truth about himself. He kept his leg, and the prize was a ruined body, an addiction, and the loss of the woman he loved, and a life angrier and emptier than it had to be. Don't make his mistake. Hannah lets them take the leg. The rescue crew pulls her out, and in the ambulance, a clot of fat from the amputation site hits her lungs, and she dies in front of him from the one complication no doctor on Earth could have stopped. House goes home, rips the mirror tile off his bathroom wall, sits on the floor with a secret stash of Vicodin he never threw away, a year of sobriety against one bottle. And then Cuddy appears in his doorway. She's called off her engagement, and she stands there and tells the most impossible man she's ever known that she loves him, that she wishes she didn't, and that she can't help it. He asks if this is real. She says yes. The pills hit the floor, and they finally kiss. 6 years' attention finally pays off on a bathroom floor. So House and Cuddy are a couple now, and House announces it with the subtlety of a fire alarm, standing in the middle of a crowded hospital lobby and shouting it for the whole building, "I slept with Lisa Cuddy." He announced it to a packed lobby because of course he did, and for a while it genuinely works. He babysits her daughter Rachel, nearly poisons the kid with a swallowed coin within the hour, then runs a covert surveillance operation on a toddler to hide it from Cuddy. He secretly coaches Rachel to ace her preschool interview. He survives dinner with Cuddy's mother, barely. The team changes around him. 13 vanishes on a mysterious personal leave everyone assumes is medical, and Cuddy fills the gap by planting a medical student on the team, Martha Masters, a 20-something double doctorate genius who's physically incapable of telling a lie, which makes her House's natural predator and prey at the same time. He finally meets someone who can't lie, and it ruins his whole week. Then comes the test that breaks it. Cuddy finds blood where there shouldn't be blood, and the scan shows a mass on her kidney that looks for several terrifying days like cancer that has already spread.
There's a mass in your kidney.
This is the moment the whole relationship was built for. The moment House just has to show up and hold her hand, and he can't. He vanishes during her biopsy, dodges her calls, hides at his apartment, and when he finally appears at her bedside, calm and present and loving, it's because he swallowed Vicodin to get through the door. The mass turns out to be benign. The relapse doesn't. Cuddy realizes that when she needed him most, House chose numbness over her, and that he always will, and then she ends it.
You'll choose yourself over everybody else over and over again because that's just who you are.
And the show rhymes with itself on purpose. House ends up exactly where the last chapter ended, on his bathroom floor, pills in hand. Except this time, nobody comes through the door, and he swallows them. What follows is a spectacular public flameout. He holes up at a hotel with a rotation of booze, Vicodin, and prostitutes. Then he leaps off the hotel balcony into the pool in front of a cheering crowd. He marries a green card bride named Dominica, basically to spite Cuddy, at a garden party. His recovery plan was a hotel, Vicodin, and increasingly bad ideas.
I know we said no secrets, but I think I need to take this alone, honey bunny.
Okay.
Even the season's warmest detour is shadowed. 13 resurfaces, and House discovers her personal leave was actually a prison sentence. Because when her brother reached the final, agonizing stage of Huntington's, the disease she also carries, she ended his suffering herself. House drives her home from prison, works it out on the way, and makes her a quiet, terrifying promise. When her time comes, he'll be there to do the same for her.
I'll kill you. When the time comes, if you want me to.
And House's own desperation keeps escalating. He starts injecting himself with an experimental muscle regrowth drug, and when it breeds tumors in his thigh, he climbs into his bathtub with surgical tools and tries to cut him out of his own leg alone before the pain forces him to call for help. Out of everyone he dials, only Cuddy picks up. It ends with the most infamous 90 seconds of the series. House comes to return a hairbrush, sees Cuddy through the window having dinner with a new man, and walks back to his car. Then he reverses, lines the car up with her house, and drives it through the front wall into her dining room, with Cuddy, her sister, and her date scattering inside. He climbs out of the wreck, hands his stunned best friend the keys, says he'll see him in court, and strolls away down the street.
You're right. I feel much better.
Next time we see him, he's on a beach in another country, smiling, a fugitive from everything. The final stretch opens with the bill coming due. House is a year deep into a prison sentence for the crash, and true to form, he never even fought for a lighter one. Days from early parole, he diagnoses a fellow inmate that the prison doctors have written off, and when nobody will run his treatment, he torches his own release to prove the diagnosis and save the man. Prison House is just regular House with worse coffee. The person who finally gets him out is the show's best long game. Foreman, the burglary hire from year one, well, he's now the dean of medicine, running the entire hospital, and he springs House on a brutally short leash, complete with an ankle monitor and the standing threat of being sent straight back. The breaking and entering hire now runs the entire hospital.
I need you to solve this, and I need you to do it without making me look like I can't control you.
The old world is gone. Cuddy left after the crash and never came back. 13 has one foot out of the door, and House, in his one purely kind act of the year, fires her so she'll stop wasting her countdown on him, and sends her off to Greece with a woman she loves. The rebuilt team is Taub, Chase, a blunt young neurologist named Park, and Jessica Adams. The idealistic prison doctor House got fired on his way out. Even Wilson takes some winning back. Their reunion involves an actual punch to House's face, but the two of them click back into a place like they always do. The year then takes two hard swings at House's people. A psychotic patient stabs Chase with a scalpel, nearly paralyzing him and shaking his faith in House for good. And House's own mother arrives engaged to Thomas Bell. The family friend House has believed for 40 years was his real father. Wilson secretly runs the DNA, and the result is a perfect, cruel House punchline. Bell isn't his father either. He spent his whole life solving everyone's puzzle but his own. Even a sham marriage turns real on him. Dominica moves in, the Green Card Act becomes genuine affection, and House quietly hides the letter granting her citizenship so she won't leave. She finds it, and she leaves. And then the show plays its final card. Wilson, the oncologist, the man who has spent 2 decades walking other people through the worst news of their lives, finds a tumor in his own chest, and cancer is his. He refuses to die the slow way he's watched 1,000 patients die, so he chooses the most violent treatment available. A chemo blitz so aggressive it might kill him on its own, and he does it in House's apartment, with House, the worst caregiver alive, holding the bucket, managing the pain, and staying up through the night with him. It's the gentlest the show has ever let House be, and it fails. The tumor doesn't shrink, surgery's off the table, and the math lands like a hammer. With treatment, a couple of wretched hospital years if he's lucky. Without it, about 5 good months, lived on his own terms. Wilson chooses the 5 months. House rages against it, sabotages it, begs him to fight, and finally, for maybe the first time in his life, respects another human being's right to choose even when the choice is dying. The two of them start planning the time Wilson is left, and then Foreman delivers the last cruelty. A prank House pulled has flooded the hospital, his parole is revoked, and he owes 6 more months in prison. The exact 6 months Wilson has left to live.
You have to report to Mercer County Jail on Monday to serve out the rest of your sentence.
House disappears. He ends up in an abandoned building, getting high with a heroin addict patient named Oliver, and as he lies there, the building catches fire around him, and his mind puts him on trial. The dead and the gone walk out of the smoke one by one. Kuttner, who chose to die, Amber, who died because of him, Stacy, the love he drove away, Cameron, the conscience he wore down. They argue over whether he should bother getting up, whether a man like him could ever actually change, and House, surrounded by every mistake he's ever made, chooses to live.
You're right. But I can change.
He gets up, heads for the exit, and the viewers watch through Wilson and Foreman's eyes as a burning beam comes down behind him and the entire building explodes with House inside. A body is pulled from the ashes, the dental records come back a match, and the news goes out. Gregory House is dead. The funeral gathers everyone the show ever loved, and one by one they say generous things over the casket. Then Wilson stands up, tries to recite the same warm lies, and breaks, telling the mourners the truth instead. The man in the box was a selfish, narcissistic jerk who took and gave nothing back. And mid-sentence, his phone buzzes in his pocket.
This isn't my phone.
Wilson follows the text and finds House sitting on his stoop, very much alive. He swapped his dental records with Oliver's body in the fire and let the world bury the wrong man. And the price tag is the whole point. Gregory House is legally dead, which means no prison, but also no medical license, no identity, no going back, ever. The most decorated diagnostician in America just erased himself, and he did it for exactly one reason, so that nothing on earth can keep him from spending Wilson's last 5 months at his side. Faking your own death to keep a promise? That's peak House. The show tucks everyone in on its way out. Chase finally steps out of the shadow and takes over as the new head of diagnostics, with Park and Adams at his table. Cameron is in Chicago, remarried, holding her baby. Taub is on the floor playing with his 2 daughters. 13 is in Greece with her girlfriend. And somewhere down the road, House's promise to her is still standing. And Foreman, alone in his office, jiggles his forever wobbly table, reaches underneath, and finds House's hospital ID badge wedged under the leg. And then he smiles, because he knows. And then they're just 2 friends on motorcycles on an open road. One of them is dying, one of them is dead on paper. And both of them more free than they've ever been. Wilson starts to bring up what's coming. The end, the cancer, the plan for when it gets bad. And House cuts him off with the last line of the series.
Cancer's boring.
They open the throttles and ride off together. And after 8 seasons, 177 episodes, and every wall a human being can build around himself, the man who swore that people never change ends the story by proving himself wrong. That is the entire story. A genius who treated love like a disease, and a show that spent 8 years curing him the hard way. Every loss on that road, from a bus crash to a bathroom floor, was the same lesson wearing a different face, and he only learned it when the last person he had left started dying. If you want more, I broke down every time House pulled off a diagnosis no other doctor on the planet could have made. Watch that one next, and subscribe so you don't miss it.